As I started this review, we were in the final week of 2020. The pandemic, civil unrest, murder hornets, the death of Eddie Van Halen. These are only a few aspects of the year's negative reputation. I've run into problems just like everyone else, but making these videos certainly counteracted that. I stopped being a passive fan, and from my own laptop, I contributed to the world of Jandek by simply sharing my thoughts. Therefore, I see 2020, or at least its second half, as a turning point in my strange fascination with this singer, so it seems appropriate to end the year with a turning point in Jandek's catalog. When Follow Your Footsteps hit the scene in 1986, I imagine that some fans were caught off guard. After two albums of unpredictable atonal garage rock, it would have seemed like that was the new Jandek, especially since he took some time to fully settle into that style. However, as stated in my previous video, Jandek albums are primarily for Jandek's sake, so perhaps we should forget about consistency at this point. For whatever reason, he saw fit to use conventional guitar chords on this record, and not just as a brief experiment. By extension, this is considered the first record where he attempted a mainstream sound, which is the side of Jandek that many fans originally experienced. Interpreting Jandek's evolution is no easy feat, but we do have a major clue in this case. Follow Your Footsteps marks the debut of Eddie, the guitarist and vocalist who would be mentioned by name on the Blue Corpse album. I won't go into detail about that, but that album cements Eddie's role as the more traditional guitarist. Since his technique had not been heard on earlier albums, we can only conclude that he joined the project sometime after Telegraph Melts was recorded. Obviously, we're not sure of their history together, but for Jandek to allow this much influence on the music, naturally there had to be some mutual respect. While Eddie does add a lovely touch of folk blues, don't let it distract you from how diverse this album really is. Fans will notice that the later tracks borrow from earlier work like Telegraph Melts and the acoustic side of Interstellar Discussion. However, diversity may work against the album in terms of the drumming, since it's a bit inconsistent. It starts on the first few Eddie songs, but doesn't return until the two electric songs later on. Also worth noting is the lack of bass, harmonica, and Nancy, who makes an appearance but does not sing. I guess you could argue that the album is unique for the combination of things it does and does not have. In fact, it probably belongs in the top 5 most unique Jandek albums overall. Our first taste of conventional Jandek is on the intro song Honey, which is based on a B-C-sharp chord progression, but switches to a minor key towards the end. Sometimes the progression is interrupted by random noodling on the drums and electric guitar, which makes the group sound like it's still settling into the surroundings. As an album opener, I wouldn't rank Honey very highly, but I do give it credit for starting something new in Jandek's work. Next, Eddie brings in the acoustic guitar for What Do You Want to Sing, this time sticking with E-flat minor and A-flat. The only lyrics are the title, which Nancy blurts out at the end as if she's impatient with the aimless strumming. If you thought Honey was a throwaway, you might be annoyed with this track. What follows is Jaws of Murmur, the album's first complete song, and the only one where Eddie sings. That said, he probably could have started better, since his voice is incoherent and rather distant sounding. Even if you look up the lyrics, the song is still hard to interpret, and the words seem like stream of consciousness. Basically, there's some kind of bird of night that serves as a messenger from the all-seeing devil below, while the title refers to the bird's voice. As for the instruments, the guitar carries on with the previous chord progression, slowing down just a bit, while the drums play the same role as last time. Jaws of Murmur definitely has some potential, so I'm hoping Jandek will breathe new life into it for a concert. Next, the team takes it up a notch on Preacher, where Jandek takes the mic and Eddie tries a new playing style. It almost sounds like hill country blues with all the different guitar fills. On top of that, some dissonant electric guitar licks are peppered throughout the song, which is an interesting contrast with the acoustic part. This is an excellent example of an instrument-based Jandek song, since the lyrics are merely the same 2 lines sung twice.
I going down to the preacher. Are you gonna think he's your teacher?
If you want a more complete package, Didn't Ask Why has you covered. As one of the first things I uploaded to this channel, it has always been my go-to track for this album. Again, this is basically folk blues, although it leans more towards folk due to the strumming style. One notable aspect is the intro riff, which is the opposite of what you'd expect at this point, since the guitar playing usually just cuts to the chase. From there, it's mostly back and forth between D and C chords, except for the occasional G and the B flat in the bridge. The lyrics are nothing intricate. Jandek decided to leave home due to a callous or neglectful partner, and there's even some soft moaning to express what the words can't. For me, this song is still a favorite, but for others, it is often overshadowed by one of the other highlights. I Know You Well is not only the fan favorite of the record, but Jandek himself seems fond of it. If you're familiar with his concerts, you know that most set lists consist of brand new material, but there have been a few exceptions. In the past decade, at least 3 of his classic songs have been played live, including the reworked I Know You Well that appears on the album London Thursday. Not even the magnum opus I Knew You Would Leave has such a distinction. Back on Follow Your Footsteps, the song in question is on the mellow side, featuring Eddie's graceful fingerpicking. Like before, the songwriting has some variety with its intro, fills, and conclusion, and it could easily pass for a demo tape of a folk song. In this case, we Jandek fans know that lo-fi is as good as it gets. In a soft, breathy voice, Jandek sings to his former friend, who visits and claims to be a new man, but Jandek isn't buying it.
Can't come around the way you do. Say that you're somebody new. Whoa, I knew you from before. That's the way you are once more.
It's simple enough, but to me the most interesting line is, "Time won't tell what you've been doing." For the longest time, I heard it as "time will tell," but the internet says otherwise, so I guess this is Jandek's way of shutting the door in the guy's face. On a more personal note, many of the more melodic Jandek songs give me some pretty intense nostalgia, mostly because of when I first heard them. Even if it's just a few minutes, I Know You Well is yet another way for me to escape to a simpler time, and a sense of escape is what makes me seek out more of this guy's music. Tracks 9 and 10 sound like outtakes from the last 2 albums, so they're rather forgettable. The instrumental, Straight 30 Seconds, features the guitar chords typical of that period, while the drummer doesn't do much until the very end. Bring On Fatima continues from there, with even more drumming, but oddly enough, this one is best known for something that's missing. Thanks to my friend, I can confirm that the LP version starts with a quote from a Frank Zappa song, and as we all know, a pop culture reference in a Jandek song is like finding a McDonald's in Vietnam. However, there's not much else to this track. It almost sounds like an unsuccessful attempt at a sequel to Nancy Sings. The last section of the album resembles side 2 of Interstellar Discussion, except for some extra reverb on the CD version, at least. Obviously, the highlight is For Today, the next track to be remade for You Walk Alone. It's important to know that, because the title on the newer version has absolutely nothing to do with the lyrics. Anyway, this one is a throwback to early Jandek, due to the repetitive guitar plucking and absence of collaborators. The lyrics start by describing a nice, relaxing day, but then it gets weird with the rhyme, "For today I'll cut you thrice, for today I'll cup your eyes." From there, it sounds like Jandek is telling us a riddle as he describes seemingly unrelated things like a blanket and an ink-stained jersey. When we're left to figure it all out, he returns to the laid-back tone from before. The song definitely falls into the cryptic category, so you have to be a fan of that to enjoy this version. Meanwhile, the appeal of the newer one probably has to do with the instrumentation. Regardless, it's always fascinating to have 2 different tones for the same song. In my first year as a fan, Follow Your Footsteps was always taunting me since I Know You Well was the only track I could find. I remember expecting this to be the best Jandek album if the rest was going to be that beautiful. Of course, there was more than met the eye, and I ended up respecting it for different reasons. Up to this point in the catalog, you pretty much had a choice between garage rock and dissonant folk music, so it was fitting for this album to recap those when a new style was unveiled. While I rank it highly for that reason, I should note that it's not especially focused on lyrics, even though it does say enough. Regardless, I think most fans would agree on this album's revolutionary status and the impact of Eddie in Jandek's evolution. I'm sure you can't wait to see that continue, but if the past is any indication, this can be a slow process.